let's go on with more talk of the Chinese government. I mean, we need to go to part two, but I've commented on this isn't a globalist plot, but China, where there's smoke, there's fire. And China is certainly to blame for much of the spread of the pandemic. Now, how much? I don't know. They won't say. Now, we could make stuff up, but then we'd be no better than them, okay? So I have to go with the theory of we don't know because they're not saying anything. Now, it could be that they had, like many of the conspiracy theorists say, it could be that they had a lab experiment go bad and they're covering it up, okay? It could be that they are so incompetent that they have no clue, just a plan to lie and deceive so that the West doesn't find out how incompetent and clueless their government actually is. Or it could be something in between. When they don't come forward and say what they know and give us facts, we have no alternative but to speculate, okay? And by the way, anybody, I have to say this, anybody who believes that pointing blame towards China is racist, friend, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I will not keep an open mind about that. If you think that criticism of China is racist and their communist government is racist, you have no idea what you're talking about. I will consider nothing you have to say because you are a reactionary simpleton. And I'll tell you why. I am certainly a huge critic of the Chinese Communist government. I always have been. I always will be. I always will be critical of any communist totalitarian regime because they are 100% contrary to everything that the West, that democracy, that representative republics are all about. Okay? And here is why I say this. Who are the two biggest critics of the Beijing government? The two biggest critics of the Chinese Communist government. Taiwan and Hong Kong. Newsflash. They're Chinese too. So does that make them racist? Of course not. That's like the old Phil Hendry routine about the race car driver who was being criticized. This guy was a pretend NASCAR driver, and people were making fun of him because he actually didn't race in NASCAR. He raced in a video game and said it was the same thing. So they criticized him. And basically this guy says, well, you're being racist by criticizing me. They said, what do you mean racist? He says, well, I'm a racist and you're saying bad things against me. So that makes you, I'm a racer and you're saying bad things against me. So you must be racist. That's not the definition. Okay. The definition of racist is if you're disagreeing with somebody who doesn't look like you, you can't because they look different from you. It's ridiculous. That's not even the definition of racist. So I hope I've cleared that up. Now that we've done that, let's get back to fighting the battle of the COVID-19 virus, part 2. Okay. We've had a lot of success in part 1, a whole lot of success. We flattened the curve. None of the numbers are nearly what some of the experts said they would be. And to be fair, they didn't say this is what's going to happen and there's nothing you can do about it. Most of the experts, most of the smart people said, look, this is what's going to happen if we don't do A, B, and C. We did A, B, and C, and it didn't happen. That's a big deal. We did listen to the smart people, the people that knew what they were talking about. We listened to them. The obvious path then for part 2, continue listening to the smart people. I mean, it worked the first time. So wouldn't you think it would work the second time? I would. I think that's an obvious path in which we should take. Continue listening to the smart people. Just keep it up. Some of the things that have happened since we shut things down in March. The economy has been decimated. Now, I have been very fortunate in that I have not lost my job. In fact, I haven't. The trophy wife hasn't. None of my boys nor their spouses have. So we've all been very, very fortunate in my family. Others, perhaps many of you listening to the sound of my voice, not so much. Okay. And the economy, because it has been decimated by some numbers in figures we've not seen since the Great Depression. In some numbers, bigger than what we've seen in the Great Depression. Now, we kept facts and figures and numbers and statistics differently back then than we do now, so you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. We're not using the same graphs, the same statistics, and the economy is certainly different than it was back in the 1930s as well. However, most will agree we're in the same chapter, the same area as the Great Depression right now, okay? Now, we need to do something different. We need to get the economy back. The economy needs to be restored. And by relaxing some of these restrictions, we're doing just that. And we're doing it slowly. We're doing it correctly. Now, if things begin to go awry, if things begin to go back up, if people begin to get sicker, if the hospitals begin to start filling up again, then we need to back off. Okay? Or so goes the plan. And I think it's a good plan, okay? So again, keeping with the same routine that we've had, let's continue listening to the smart people. The smart people now, however, are still the doctors. They're still the scientists. They're certainly the statisticians. But they're also the economists. And they're also the businessmen, okay? Let me give you an example. Early on during this pandemic, I heard people say things that were just totally ridiculous. My background is in the day job is in manufacturing. I've worked in manufacturing for 42 years, so I know a little bit about it. And when I heard people on the radio, experts in air quotes, saying, why, we can just take the Wentzville truck assembly plant and start making ventilators there tomorrow. They had no idea what they were talking about. You can't take a truck assembly plant and begin manufacturing ventilators overnight. You can't do it. It's a totally different animal, okay? So those people knew nothing about what they were talking about. They were not the smart people. They were smart about A, but they knew nothing about B. I was listening to the radio several weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I guess, and I heard a doctor from SLU, very smart guy, starting to talk about the economy. And as I was listening to this guy, it became very evident. And I'm surprised that Charlie Brennan, who was doing the interview, didn't just shut the guy off, because he's usually pretty good about that. This guy, when he talked about bugs and viruses and sicknesses, he knew a lot about what he was talking about. Friends, when he started talking about the economy, this guy hadn't a clue. He knew nothing about what he was talking about. In fact, while my education did not even approach his, it was very evident to me that I knew more about economics than he did. Far more about economics than he did. So in other words, while he was one of the smart people in the room, he was one of the smart people when it came to medicine, not the economy. And we're to the point where we need to start focusing on the economy, not instead of, but in addition to the pandemic, because that's all part of it too, okay? Dr. Fauci, who again, I respect immensely, and his critics, I think his critics are not paying attention to what they need to be paying attention to. In fact, I think his critics are just being trolls for the most part. Early on, the smart people and Dr. Fauci, when asked many questions, they said, I don't know. When are we going to get testing? I don't know. We need testing, but when are we going to get it? Well, we don't know. We have to wait for a vaccine. Shut it all down until we get a vaccine or we get testing. But when are we going to get enough testing? Well, we don't know. When are we going to get a vaccine? Well, we don't know. How many people have had COVID-19? Well, we don't know. When did people really start getting COVID-19 in this country? Well, we don't know. What's the percentage of people that get it that are asymptomatic compared to those who get it and they're sick? Well, we don't know. Can you get it again once you have it? Can you get it again? Well, we don't know. Now, do I think these people are lying when they say this? No, I think they're being very honest and they're being upfront and they're giving the best answer that they have. They don't know the answers to any of these questions. Now, would it be better if they'd make things up? No. I think they're doing the right thing by telling you what they know and what they don't know. Okay? And there's a lot that they don't know. They just don't. When you get to that point, when you get to the point of not knowing what's going on and you don't know when you're going to know it, you need to make an adjustment. Stay sheltered in place, shut down the economy until we have a vaccine. Let's consider this. COVID-19 is from a virus, the coronavirus, okay? And there's a name for it, but I can't remember what the name is. It's got some special name. AIDS is also a virus. How long has AIDS been around? 40 years? Do we have a vaccine for AIDS yet? I think they have one that kind of works sometimes for some people. But after 40 years, we don't have a vaccine for the AIDS virus. If we don't have a vaccine for 40 years for this current coronavirus, should we keep the economy shut down? Think about that. How long did it take to get a virus or for a vaccine for Ebola? I think it took close to 20 years, 15 to 20 years to get a vaccine for that. Okay? So we can't stay sheltering in place and the economy shut down until we find a vaccine, especially when the smart people are asked, when are we going to get a vaccine? The answer is, I don't know. Now, just shutting the economy down for 2 months, we've had food shortages, especially meat. Trophy wife went to Costco, went to the beef section. They had 2 trays of meat. That's it. She got one of them. And I guess the other person got another one, but then that was it. They were done. D-U-N, done. No more meat. Vegetables are being plowed under into the fields because they don't have a way to get them from the field to the market because those things used to go to restaurants. Restaurants are closed, and the supply chains were very complex in this country, okay? Many businesses have gone bankrupt, okay? Think about that. Somebody took their life savings, their dream, they invested it in their business. And just because the government says, yeah, we're going to shut you down because people are going to get sick, you've now gone bankrupt and you have nothing. Well, that's okay because the government's writing checks to everybody and everybody's going to be fine, right? Think about that. You can't just write checks to everybody. Because if nobody goes to work, if everybody's sheltered in place, it doesn't matter if everybody gets $10,000 a week. If there's only 2 trays of meat at Costco, folks, $20,000 isn't going to buy more because there is none. Businesses are bankrupt. Taxes have been halved, okay? In the state of Missouri and California, by the way, they're expecting to collect about half the taxes they did last year, okay? Half. So that means there's going to be half the money to spend. A year ago, California was running a surplus because they had made such a huge tax increase that it actually ran surpluses in their economy. First time in a long time in their state. They're now so broke already that they had to borrow money from the federal government. And you think they're going to pay that back? No, never. So they went from a surplus to we have to borrow money to stay open in 2 months. States cannot print money, folks. The U.S. government can print money. The state of Missouri cannot. The state of California cannot. The state of Illinois cannot print money. Only the federal government can print money. About 4 months ago, we had a $3 trillion deficit that many people pointed to President Trump, me included, by the way, and said, look, this is not sustainable. You cannot have a $3 trillion deficit. Well, we don't have a $3 trillion deficit. We have nearly a $6 trillion deficit now. So if $3 trillion wasn't obtainable, what do you think the $6 trillion is? Really? Not sustainable? I think, yeah. Okay. And people say, well, we just print more money. We can get out of debt. We'll be just fine. And the truth of the matter is, what's happening in this country with the debt, it's happened in other countries before, quite often. And they always get out of it. But there's only